was a way of marking relative positions on the Earth, or marking positions on the Earth relative to this pattern in the sky. Now what is happening here is that the sun is moving in the direction of the arrows around this way, but the intersection of the celestial equator and the plane of the ecliptic is moving in the opposite direction. This is the constellation of Pisces, this is the constellation of Aquarius. And right now, that vernal equinox, this intersection of those 2 points, is moving around the circle at 50 seconds of arc per year, or a full cycle of 25,920 years. Here we have the winter solstice, and here we have the summer solstice. Now, at the winter and summer solstices, you'll notice that the departure between the 2 planes is at its greatest extent. In order to understand what's happening on 2012, you need to have at least a basic understanding of this pattern right here that's in front of you now. Because on the day, on the December 21st, 22nd of 2012, that significant point right there, which is the winter solstice, is going to be aligned with the center of the galaxy. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that on that day the world is going to come to an end. But it does mean that to the ancient people who were intimately tracking this motion, that would be a significant day. Because, if you think of it this way, every calendar has the first day of the year, right? A January 1st. Each day has the first hour of the day. From midnight to 1 o'clock is hour 1. If you took the numbers off the clock, what use would it be? You have to have a point, what's called a fiducial point, some reference point at which the rest of the cycle can be referred to, right? So in terms of the daily round, we have the clock with 12 hours on it. Midnight marks the 0 point, and we start counting a new day from that point. In the annual cycle, we have a calendar, and we know that the calendar is not fixed, is it? That's why we had to go from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, because the discrepancies had begun to creep in. So in the course of the year, what is happening is we have to have an anchor point, something to measure, a 0 point. Okay, in the great year, this is the 0 point right here, the vernal equinox. Everything is measured from the vernal equinox. So keep that in mind as we proceed on here, because then I think it'll begin to dawn on you what at least one of the meanings of 2012 is. Because like so many of things in the occult system, there are multiple layers of meaning. And sometimes they only appear to be contradictory, but usually when you break through to higher levels of insight, you realize that what appeared to be a contradiction actually becomes harmonious and complementary as you proceed along. Okay, so again from Hamlet's Mill, the Greeks still had the old idea, but they asked themselves questions about it. What moved was the sky, but questions about the sky posed abstruse problems. The greatest was, of course, the slow motion of the tilt of the sky described above, which went through a great year of 26,000 years. The Greek astronomers had enough instrumentation and data to detect the motion, which is immensely slow, and they saw that it applied to the whole of the sky. Hipparchus in 127 BC called it Procession of the equinoxes. There is good reason to assume that he actually rediscovered this, that it had been known some 1,000 years previously, and that on it, the archaic age based its long-range computation of time. Right there, that's the 2 and 2 we have to put together. The archaic age based its long-range computation of time on the great year model, the processional cycle. Hamlet's Mill demonstrates exhaustively that the idea was that the rise and fall of civilizations and empires were somehow tied in intimately with this unfolding cycle of the great year. Would such knowledge have relevance to us today in terms of the evolution of our own empire that we've been watching, to some cases evolve, in other cases devolve, the American empire for the last 200 and some years that it's been since it was established as an occult operation back in 1776? That's something I should talk about, but I probably won't tonight. Maybe in another venue, or maybe during questions and answers. We begin to notice that the full cycle of precession contains 360 degrees of arc. And you can go through, we measure circles and we measure all of geometric forms in terms of degrees, minutes, and seconds. We also measure time in terms of degrees, minutes, and seconds, or hours, minutes, and seconds. In 360 degrees of every circle, there's 1,296,000 seconds of arc. Now what's interesting about that is because in the ancient Yuga cycles, the Treta Yuga, which goes back so far we don't even know, it's lost in the mists of history, the Treta Yuga was 1,296,000 years. Scale and variance. What we're going to discover when we begin to explore the way these scales of phenomena were measured is that they are all reflections of each other, and the same proportional numbers will begin to recur or emerge over and over and over again. Not only in the measure of time, but in the measure of space. Hence, we found out that a month of the great year was 2,160 years. If we measure the diameter of the moon, which gives its name to the month, right? The moon measured in the sacred mile, which is the one we still use today, is 2,160 miles. So this is not a coincidence. It's in the way that we measure time and space. And it's for this reason that I'm glad that we here in America are preserving certain remnants of the ancient system. We've got the British system. Feet, inches, miles, furlongs, others. However, that system is at least 4,000, 4,500 years old, at least. We inherited it from England. England has gone to the metric system, and so now the links with the past that we still preserve by measuring things in feet, inches, miles, yards, furlongs, and so forth is now in our custodianship. And if we go to the metric, I'm afraid what's going to happen is very important links with the past are going to be lost. Let's proceed on. There's our 25,920 years. Here's the pre-diluvian god kings of Sumeria. And you'll notice these great reigns of these kings that we get from a number of sources, the clay tablets, from the writings of Berossus and others. Every one of those reigns is a sacred number, or a multiple of a sacred number. I said, remember the number 6,480, the length of one season, or 1/4 of the cycle, and you'll see that number reflected into the reigns of Megaleros and Amempsinos, Eudorakes right there, 64,800. You'll see that the total reigns of the kings is 432,000 years. Now, according to their concept, that was the reigns of the 10 pre-diluvian kings. The final reign of Xisuthros was terminated by the Great Flood, which basically ended the former world and inaugurated the present world. Then when we turn to the Vedas, when we look at the Vedic ages, we see something interesting. The Vedas are built upon multiples of 432,000 years. So you can see the Sumerians preserved this component, this level of the system, going up to 432,000 years. The Vedas preserve it from there onto the bigger cycles. Notice the Treta Yuga right here, 1,296,000 years. Think about that. You have a correlation. The circle, every circle has 1,296,000 seconds in it. This cycle of the Treta Yuga has 1,296,000 years. So there's a scale invariant correlation between these two phenomena that exist on these very disparate levels. The idea here is that when you have grasped this canon of sacred number and sacred proportion, it serves as a mnemonic system whereby you can access all kinds of phenomena regarding the measure of time and space.